Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we're going to see who Longlegs is. One of the most malevolent, manipulative, and terrifying characters of recent times is, without a doubt, Longlegs. However, what truly instills fear is the entity behind this character, whose presence is not only physical, but also spiritual and mental. Longlegs is not a mere killer, but a being that manipulates, corrupts, and destroys from the shadows, leaving a trail of chaos and suffering in its wake. Its ability to manipulate human emotions, play with vulnerabilities, and distort reality makes it one of the most formidable entities in the history of horror cinema. That's why in this video I will explain in detail the story and origins of Longlegs, and to do so, I'll give you a summary of its history in the film. Then I'll talk about its physical appearance, its personality, and its incredible abilities and known weaknesses. The story of Longlegs begins with Dale Ferdinand Kobble, a man whose life was marked by failure and frustration. In his youth, he was a rock musician in the 70s who never achieved fame, which led him to despair. This existential void drove him to seek answers in dark forces, becoming a satanic killer known as Longlegs. His macabre appearance, standing at 1.83 meters, with pale skin and a face distorted by failed plastic surgeries, made him even more terrifying. These physical traits not only reflect his outward monstrosity, but also his complete disconnection from humanity, as his goal is to fulfill a demonic purpose, to destroy the purity of happy families. Over the years, Longlegs dedicated himself to creating life-size dolls, which he used to corrupt Christian families. His mission was simple yet cruel, to incite these families to kill each other in an act of satanic ritual. Since 1966, when the Applewhite family was his first victim, Longlegs repeated his macabre pattern, always leaving a letter signed with his name. Each of these letters had a purpose, to make the victims destroy themselves in honor of Satan. But the story doesn't end there. On a cold winter morning, a little girl watches curiously as a car stops in front of her house. Driven by something inexplicable, she goes outside and approaches the empty vehicle. Suddenly, a noise makes her turn, and she sees a figure hidden behind the house. A strange man who, upon seeing her, smiles unsettlingly. He tells her that her birthday is approaching, and for a moment, his face is revealed, showing her an image that will change her life forever. Something in that look marks her, something she will never escape. Years later, we meet Lee Harker, an FBI detective with a sharp instinct, who is in a meeting where she is informed about a serial killer on the loose. The man, a dangerous white male, possibly armed, has left a trail of victims, and the FBI's strategy is clear: to search each neighborhood, door by door. While her partner prepares to do so, Harker stays behind, observing. Something draws her to one particular house, something that tells her the killer is hiding there. Though her partner isn't convinced, Harker can't ignore her gut feeling and decides to go in alone. When she knocks on the door, a shot goes through her partner's head, leaving him dead on the floor. She enters the house, where she finds him, sitting on the bed, watching her, offering no resistance. The case takes an even stranger turn when Harker undergoes psychological tests after the incident, and although her responses are almost perfect, something in her mind seems to work differently. As she investigates further, she discovers that all the crime scenes share a disturbing pattern. Over 30 years, 10 different families have been murdered, all linked by a common detail. They all had a daughter whose birthday fell on the 14th of some month. The most disturbing part is that at all the crime scenes, there are no signs of forced entry, no footprints or traces. The weapons used belong to the families themselves. Without the signed letters from Longlegs, it seemed the killer was never there. Terrified but determined, Harker begins to dig deeper into the code behind the letters, discovering that Longlegs doesn't kill directly, but instead forces the families to do it for him. as if he were a puppeteer. Her mind takes her to an unsettling connection with the Charles Manson case. But the investigation takes an even more personal turn when Harker receives a letter at her own house, a cryptic message from Longlegs. The threat is clear. If she dares to tell the FBI, her mother will die. Each day becomes a race against time as Harker plunges deeper into the abyss of the occult, discovering that Longlegs has an algorithm that allows him to choose his next victims, a method based on satanic principles. The feeling that her time is running out becomes palpable. Now, Harker knows that the real battle for her life and the lives of the innocent ones left has begun. Look, this is where everything starts to connect. Harker and Carter already know that the code has been completely deciphered, and there's a repeating pattern in the messages. The tragedy on the Kamer family farm. That's where the X marks the spot. Carter remembers it perfectly, because at the time, one of the daughters, Carrie, wasn't at the farm. She was at school, making her the only survivor of the massacre. Now, Harker has a theory. Investigating the farm could be key, but they also need to talk to Carrie. Maybe she knows something about Longlegs. So without wasting any time, the agents arrive at the farm, enter the barn, shine their flashlights, and go up the stairs. Suddenly, they find a cross on the floor. Carter approaches, rips up some wooden planks, and underneath, there's a sheet with an inverted triangle. But that's not the most disturbing part. Nearby, they lift a box and find something chilling, a hyper-realistic wooden doll. They take it to a forensic expert, who confirms that it was handmade, but there's more. Inside its head, they find a metal ball, and here's where it gets strange. When the forensic expert brings a device close to the ball, it starts emitting energy and a strange sound. Something's not right. That thing has something they still don't understand. At that moment, Lee falls into a trance, as if her mind is being pulled elsewhere, and in her vision, she sees Longlegs in his workshop, building the doll. He calls it Carrie, the survivor. Lee snaps back to reality and knows they can't waste any time. They need to go talk to Carrie, but she's not just anywhere. She's in a psychiatric hospital. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Longlegs drives down the road. He arrives at a hardware store and approaches the counter. He asks a little girl when her birthday is, but the girl recognizes him. She's seen him before. As soon as she sees him, she calls her dad. The weird guy came back. Without saying anything else, Longlegs turns around and heads back to his car. At the hospital, Harker and Carter receive some unsettling news. Carrie had been catatonic until 2 days ago, but yesterday she received a visit, and suddenly she woke up as if nothing had happened. They check the visitor logs and find Harker's name, but there's a problem. She was never there. When Harker meets Carrie, she stares at her and says something chilling. "I've seen you before at my house," or at least someone who looked a lot like her. Lee asks how she feels, and Carrie replies that it's like she's just woken up from a long sleep. But when Harker wants to know what she remembers about her family, we see the flashbacks, and everything starts to make sense. Carrie's family lived with the doll, not as an object, but as if it were alive. One day, a priest came to the house, but he never left alive. Then Carrie says the following with a chilling calmness: "I would do anything for that person. If they asked me to jump out of the window, I would. And if they asked me to end your life, I would do that too." Carter and Harker try to understand what's going on. Nothing makes sense. But Harker believes Longlegs uses the dolls to do his work, perhaps with black magic. And here Carter asks a key question. How does Longlegs know your name? Harker doesn't want to answer, so she lies. But Carter doesn't let it go. He finds it too suspicious that the case has progressed so quickly since Harker arrived. It was completely stalled before. And then he throws another question at her. "When was the last time you spoke to your mother?" Harker freezes. She doesn't understand where he's going with this. until Carter says something that changes everything. He checked her file and discovered that, the day before her birthday, her mother called the police. It was January 13th, 1974. In the call, Ruth, her mother, said a tall, pale man had entered the house without permission, but Harker doesn't remember anything. Now she has to face her past. She goes to her mother's house, enters Ruth's room, and the first thing Ruth asks is, "Have you been praying?" Harker is honest, telling her she doesn't anymore, and Ruth just laughs. "Good," she says, "because deep down you know that praying does nothing." In the kitchen, Harker sees a door. Something tells her there's something behind it, and in her mind, she's pulled back to the past. Her mother, armed, preparing for whatever was trying to enter the house. Harker tries to open the door, but it's locked, so she goes back to Ruth and asks directly, "Do you remember my 9th birthday?" Ruth avoids the question, but Harker insists, even mentioning the police call. Finally, Ruth gives in. She tells her that no one visited them that day, that she did everything she could to forget, but if Harker wants answers, her room is still intact. Carter finds a trunk with old photos, and that's when it all clicks. Harker is the girl in the snow we saw at the beginning of the story, and in the past, she took a photo of Longlegs. We see the memory. Ruth, protecting her daughter, facing the killer, and Longlegs just starts singing. But his song isn't just any song. In the lyrics, he practically tells her, "If you let me in now, something beautiful might happen, but if you let me go, I'll be able to come back whenever I want." Harker has no doubts now. She turns to Carter and hands him the photo, the only clear proof of Longlegs' face. Carter knows they can't waste any more time. He gives the order. They need to find him and interrogate him immediately. Soon after, on a desolate road, Longlegs is waiting for a bus. Maybe he plans to escape. Maybe he already knows they're after him. But it's too late. The patrols arrive on time and arrest him. Now the question is, has this really ended? The interrogation begins, and Lee watches everything through the screen, attentive to every detail. The mystery starts to unfold. Longlegs' real name is Dale Ferdinand Kobble, but when they try to extract more information, he only has one question in mind. When can I see Harker? The detective insists, wanting to know where he knows her from, but Longlegs doesn't answer. Instead, he starts singing Happy Birthday to Harker, sending a chill through the room. Browning stops the video and turns to Harker and Carter, explaining what they've found. A bunch of handwritten notebooks in Longlegs' suitcases. The worst part is that the handwriting matches the letters from the murders. However, there's a problem. They have no physical evidence. They can't imprison him just for being satanic, but Browning knows there's something more, something that doesn't add up. Longlegs knows Harker, and according to him, he didn't work alone. His accomplice had to be someone trustworthy, someone the families knew. Carter tries to calm the situation. "Don't worry, the guy's already in custody," he says, but Harker isn't convinced. It doesn't matter. The accomplice will kill again, and the only one who knows who they are is Longlegs. Then, Harker enters the interrogation room. Longlegs greets her excitedly, as if he's been waiting for her. She tries to get information about his accomplice, about what he told Curry in the psychiatric hospital, but he doesn't respond logically, only speaking in riddles. With a disturbing smile, he leans back in his chair. "My work was flawless," he murmurs. Lee loses patience. "You'll never work again," she tells him firmly. "You'll rot in this prison for the rest of your life." But Longlegs doesn't seem disturbed. On the contrary, he agrees with her. "Yes, I'll never leave here," he responds, "but soon I won't just be here. I'll be everywhere." Lee presses him, but then Longlegs says something that freezes her. "Ask your mother." Before she can process it, something terrifying happens. Longlegs begins to beat himself brutally. Harker steps back, frightened. "Stop!" she screams, but it's useless. He keeps hitting himself until he dies. Chaos erupts. Carter is furious. Longlegs is gone, and the FBI is left with nothing. And as if that wasn't enough, while Harker was in the interrogation, Curry also dies. Browning decides to take Lee to Ruth's house. "You can't drive in this state," he says. Lee simply nods, knowing what she has to do: talk to her mother. She needs to ask her if she knows anything about Longlegs. But when she enters the house, her mother isn't there. And then, the most terrifying revelation. Ruth is outside, dressed as a nun. She walks up to the car and, without hesitation, shoots Browning in the head. Lee is in shock. Now she understands everything. She exits the house and confronts her mother. "Put the gun down," she orders. But something else catches her attention. Beside her, there's a Longlegs doll, dressed exactly like she was when she was a child. Ruth smiles at her. "Now that he's caught, you're free," she says. Lee shakes her head. "Longlegs is dead," she responds. Ruth says nothing. She simply points her gun and shoots the doll. The sound echoes in the air. The ball inside the doll shatters, and suddenly, a strange smoke fills the air. Something has broken. A curse. A spell. And then, the truth comes to light. We go back to the past. Ruth tells us everything. The killer wasn't just a criminal. He was a doll maker who used black magic. He did everything in the name of the doll he created, and his goal was always the same: Harker's soul. But Ruth didn't allow it. As punishment, Longlegs tortured her until Ruth made a deal. If he left her daughter alone, she would help him collect the souls of other girls. So, she gave him the basement of her house to live in and make his dolls. Then, Ruth would enter the family's homes, saying the dolls were a gift from the church. Since she dressed as a nun, everyone trusted her. But once the doll entered the house, the curse began. The father would go mad and kill everyone. Now, Lee wakes up in the basement of the house. She stands up, climbs the stairs, and then a terrifying voice echoes in the darkness. "You're going to be late for Ruby's birthday." Ruby, Carter's daughter. Lee reacts immediately, takes her mother's car, and heads to Carter's house. When she arrives, everything seems normal. She knocks on the door and Carter answers, but in the reflection of a window, something terrifying. Inside the house, Ruth is sitting on the sofa. Ruby is beside her, and next to them, a new doll. Lee wastes no time. "Carter, listen to me," she says. "The nun is my mother. She's Longlegs' accomplice." But Carter doesn't believe her. The atmosphere becomes tense. Ruth stares at her. The curse has already begun. They're going to cut the cake. They need a knife. Carter heads to the kitchen. At that moment, Ruth whispers something to Lee. Anna is already dead, and the next one will be Ruby. Lee confronts her. "Why are you doing this?" she asks. Ruth sighs. "If all the family members don't die," she says calmly, "we'll both burn in hell." A noise interrupts the conversation. A scream. Carter has murdered his wife. Lee doesn't hesitate. She takes her gun and kills Carter. Ruth doesn't flinch. "Stay away from Ruby," she says. "I'll take care of her myself." But Lee doesn't let her finish. She shoots, and Ruth falls dead. Harker tries to take Ruby, but there's one more thing: the doll. She has to destroy it. But when she aims and pulls the trigger, there are no bullets. She has no choice but to leave. As she walks away, a voice echoes in her mind. It's Longlegs laughing, mocking her. He has won. And now that we've fully covered his story, I want to talk about Longlegs' physical appearance, what we know about his personality and behavior, and I'll explain his incredible abilities and how to survive and defeat this character. Longlegs is a macabre figure with extremely pale skin, almost resembling that of a corpse. This deathly hue reflects his unnatural nature and his connection to the demonic. His skin is so pale, It almost seems devoid of life, which emphasizes his otherworldly nature. The most disturbing aspect of his physique is his face. It is swollen and puffy, a result of multiple failed plastic surgeries. This physical detail not only accentuates his monstrous appearance, but also reflects his obsession with perfection and manipulation, a desire so strong that it led him to attempt altering his face, but ultimately left him disfigured. Longlegs' appearance could be interpreted as a symbol of his connection to imperfection and failure. His disfigured face and the failed surgeries may symbolize his inability to achieve human or even demonic perfection. Just like the wooden dolls he creates and manipulates, Longlegs is an incomplete being, trapped between the human and the demonic, making him a representation of corruption and chaos. Longlegs is a deeply disturbing satanic killer with a complex personality that combines an obsessive devotion to Satan with erratic and dangerous behavior. Longlegs exhibits an extremely strange personality, characterized by erratic and unpredictable behaviors such as shouting, singing, or dancing in a schizophrenic manner. These actions seem to reflect a profound disconnection from reality, which makes him even more terrifying. Despite his odd attitude and behaviors, Longlegs is incredibly astute and calculating. His devotion to Satan drives him to manipulate and corrupt families to create chaos and fulfill demonic orders. Throughout the film, it is revealed that his ability to plan and execute his crimes is deeply tied to his desire to impress and serve Satan. Longlegs' devotion to Satan is the primary motivation behind his crimes. He not only commits murders, but also creates satanic dolls that he uses to influence families and cause them to kill each other. This act is deeply rooted in his obsession with doing favors for the demon and gaining his approval. Longlegs is essentially the instrument of the demon, carrying out its desires for chaos and destruction. In the film, it is made clear that the demon is always present, like a shadow following Longlegs, and is even reflected in the encrypted figures and symbols he uses to carry out his crimes. Longlegs' presence is intimately linked to that of this dark entity that guides him in his mission. Longlegs has the ability to manipulate those around him, especially the Christian families he encounters. He uses his power to corrupt individuals, particularly parents, until they reach a state of madness, leading to serial killings. Through this manipulation, he causes parents to murder their own children, which is part of a satanic ritual for the demon. One of his most characteristic abilities is the creation of life-sized, handmade dolls that serve as vessels for his power. These dolls have a sinister purpose. When given to families, especially daughters, they act as conduits for demonic influence. Through them, Longlegs induces madness in people and drives them to kill family members in a macabre ritual. As a servant of the demon, Longlegs has access to supernatural powers beyond human capabilities. Throughout the film, it is shown that he has a direct relationship with a demonic being whom he worships and serves. This grants him mystical and paranormal abilities, including mind control and the power to manipulate objects and people at his will to carry out his murder rituals. As a demonic entity, Longlegs seems to be above the laws of physics and nature. This allows him to participate in paranormal events, such as the visions and memories of Lee Harker, as well as alter the perception of reality. This is reflected in his ability to appear at different moments in the film as a supernatural figure beyond human comprehension. To survive and defeat Longlegs, a horror character that combines satanic elements with psychological manipulation over its victims, there are several ways to approach the situation, based on the clues that the movie and lore provide. Let's analyze the strategies that could be applied to face this demonic entity and unravel the code behind its macabre plans. Longlegs uses a complex code of ritual symbols, dolls, and encrypted patterns to carry out its murders. Like some sort of demonic puzzle, this code can be solved by people with intuitive skills and a deep connection to the case, such as Lee Harker, who has a psychic ability or advanced intuition. This code is designed to corrupt families and make them kill each other. However, the key to solving it lies in understanding the elements and symbols that Longlegs uses to manipulate and control its victims. To better understand how Longlegs' coding system works, we can compare it to the Vigenère cipher, a classic method of encrypting text. In the Vigenère cipher, each letter of a message is replaced by another letter, but with a shift determined by a keyword. That is, instead of using a fixed key as in other encryption methods, the Vigenère cipher uses a keyword that repeats throughout the message. Let's suppose you have the original message, hello, and the keyword is Longlegs. What we do is repeat the keyword over the original message so that it covers all the letters of the message. The original message has 5 letters, H, E, L, L, O, and the keyword has more letters, but we only need the first 5 letters of the keyword, that is L, O, N, G, L. So now we have H with L, E with O, L with N, L with G, O with L. To encrypt each letter of the message, we look at the corresponding key letter and calculate how many positions we need to move the original letter. Each letter of the alphabet has an assigned number. A is number 1, B is 2, C is 3, and so on. Now, let's encrypt each letter of hello using the keyword Longlegs. The first letter of the message is H. The corresponding key letter is L. L is the 12th letter of the alphabet, so we move H, which is the 8th letter of the alphabet, 12 positions forward. This takes us to the letter S. The second letter of the message is E. The corresponding key letter is O. O is the 15th letter of the alphabet, so we move E, which is the 5th letter, 15 positions forward. This takes us to the letter S. The third letter of the message is L. The corresponding key letter is N. N is the 14th letter of the alphabet, so we move L, which is the 12th letter, 14 positions forward. This takes us to the letter Y. The fourth letter of the message is L. The corresponding key letter is G. G is the 7th letter of the alphabet, so we move L, which is the 12th letter, 7 positions forward. This takes us to the letter T. The 5th letter of the message is O. The corresponding key letter is L. L is the 12th letter of the alphabet, so we move O, which is the 15th letter, 12 positions forward. This takes us to the letter Z. So when we encrypt the message hello using the keyword Longlegs, we get the result SSYTZ. Each letter has been replaced by a new letter according to the shift determined by the keyword, and this is how we could decipher the messages left by Longlegs. Now, Longlegs dolls are more than just figures. They are ritual tools used to summon the demon and corrupt families. The connection between Longlegs and the dolls suggests that, by understanding the rituals and symbols behind them, one could deactivate the entity's power. One possible path to survival would be to destroy the dolls before they reach the houses, or even try to deactivate the spell through an opposing ritual. Like Lee Harker, it would be essential to have psychic abilities or a high capacity to perceive hidden patterns. If one had this ability, they could anticipate Longlegs' moves and perhaps even block the demon's influence. However, if one does not have that ability, the most recommended approach would be to rely on meticulous investigation and try to discover more about the origin of the evil. This would include finding and destroying any artifact or symbol related to the entity. If the dolls are the primary conduits for the demon's influence, avoiding any contact with them would be one of the first strategies. Destroying the dolls before they reach the houses would be crucial. In this sense, prevention is key. As in the movie, Families seem to be destined to fall under the demon's influence due to the connection Longlegs establishes with them. We know that Lee Harker's mother is forced to collaborate with the demon because of her love for her daughter. Breaking that manipulation bond could help protect potential victims. In a case like Lee's, cutting any connection that tied her mother to Longlegs would have been a vital strategy to save her. Understanding the origin of Longlegs and how it connects to the demon is another important step. Researching and searching for hidden clues within the repetitive murders could provide the necessary answers to weaken the killer and its demonic bond. With the proper knowledge, survival depends on undoing the rituals through opposing symbols or deactivating spells. To defeat Longlegs, it would be necessary to destroy its connection to the demon. Since Longlegs is merely a means to carry out the demon's desires, the ideal approach would be to sever that connection. This could be achieved through an act of purification or the elimination of the object that gives it power, such as the doll or another ritual artifact. Finally, the final confrontation with Longlegs would require a strategy to mentally disarm it. Understanding its motivation and confronting its lack of logic could be key. In the movie, Longlegs shows an unstable mindset, and its obsession with the demon could be exploited. The logic of facing it lies in knowing how to disrupt its predictable behavior. And that's all we know so far about the entity known as Longlegs. Honestly, when I watched the movie, I never thought the killer would have been living in the same house as the protagonist. I assumed there would be an accomplice, but I was very surprised at how far a person is capable of going at certain moments. But let me know your opinion in the comments. Did you already know about Longlegs? Do you think such a malevolent and manipulative entity could really exist? And finally, if you were to find yourself in front of your house one day, what would you do? And what would you do if you saw it talking to your children? Share your answers to these questions and your general opinion about Longlegs. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, share it to support the channel, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos.